The intent here is there's a lot of folks up here, consultants and support, and each one of us has very specific ideas. It's not going to be similar to the other panel. So each one of us is going to make a very short, concise presentation. The intent is not to go into tremendous detail, but to simply say, here's some of the things that each one of us in our different capacities has understood as an issue. Here's some concrete ideas to think about. And then if you have other questions, I know a lot of people are catching flights today, but if we're not, most of us are available to discuss it or start an email track back and forth. So if we go pretty fast, that's the intent. So I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to talk about one of the things that's been real big passion in my world for the last 7 to 10 years, and how I got on this whole concept of not only neutral expert, but about 2.5, 3 years ago, I sat down, and some of you have heard this spiel, so I apologize if you have. I sat down and said, I want to reinvent, I want to re-engineer ADR because it's not working as efficiently as it could. Because that's what we do in construction. We've got a building, we have a set of plans. How can we build it in the most efficient manner? That means we as the builder make more money, theoretically. How do we do that? So as I got into the litigation arena, and I really looked at all the components. I sat down, I did Venn diagrams, the org charts, the whole enchilada. And really what was interesting was about 95% of all the process had to remain. The biggest issue was, let's change how we do it, or let's modify how we do it, depending upon the case. So the current litigation methodology is kind of an in-series as opposed to a parallel approach. And the in-series means one thing occurs, not exactly, it finishes, you go on to the next item, and there is overlap, but it's essentially in-series. You repeat steps, you go back, and you rehash and come forward. So when folks are not prepared to actually mediate a case or address at a insurance meeting, what does that cause you to do? It causes you to go back. That's a very inefficient process from an engineering standpoint. The second thing was, I said you have to get people out of the concept that they're parties. And they're not parties anymore. They're really stakeholders. Everybody's a stakeholder, right up to the judge. And so if you don't rephrase the concept, and a lot of people were using it, especially yesterday, you got to get the stakeholders to do this, the stakeholders to buy into that. You have to, in my mind, you have to get them out of being litigants. So how do we improve engine performance? With value engineering, active management, and it came up today, mediation management, or whatever you want to call it or phrase it. It's active management of the ADR process. As an outsider, I'm used in construction projects, as some of the other folks are here too, we actively, proactively manage projects. That's how you get them on time, on budget, and you make more money, as opposed to more of a passive management style. So active management of the ADR in the process that, and each time it's a little bit different because it has to be customized to the case, but we're resolving cases, as many of you are, in under a year. We adapt the ADR process to the needs of the claim and the stakeholders, and then we work on issues in parallel. So instead of taking 2.5 to 3 years on average, and that's a very rough average, the VEADR process, kind of as we defined it, usually takes less than a year, unless there's just parties who are recalcitrant or other issues that are not there. So the road to resolution is really fairly straightforward. You have technical issues, which is what I deal in. You have what I call legal issues, the insurance or coverage-related issues, which Phyllis mentioned yesterday about having an early, quote, mediation or mini-binding arbitration, whatever you want to call it, to address coverage issues. And then you have the other issues. So in the case of a single-family home, there may be tremendous animosity between the plaintiff and the defendant. And you as mediators and participants, stakeholders in the process, get to deal with that. And then in our process, let's let the mediators do what they do best, which is mediate, as opposed to be babysitters. I call it babysitters. Maybe that's a little technically incorrect, but you get the point. So you can do it at an expedited time. You know, everybody's concerned about the number of mediations. You know, Matt said earlier, Matt Argue said, you know, if it's past 3 mediations, we did something wrong. That's the trend. And also was mentioned earlier about the 80-20 rule. Let's keep our eyes on the big picture. You know, 20% of the issues are 80% of the dollars in a typical case. And then the cost of resolution. I did a fancy spreadsheet, but the current case model runs way beyond the cost of the settlement, way beyond. And carriers that I meet with tell me it's multiples of the settlement dollar is the cost of defense across the board. So in our model, depending upon what happens, you can actually settle the case, and you heard it yesterday, significantly less if the parties want to do that. And if not, you know, then go to thermonuclear litigation, that's fine. So the 4 basic steps of VEADR is what I call it, is the engagement, what Bob Friedman and I talked about the other day. The construction investigation by the neutral expert team, that's what NET is. The analysis by the neutral expert team. And then what we do is we would, if we're working with others, we would hand it off to them, hand it off to the mediator. We usually do a presentation. Jim Kirkhill's been with me in a couple of the more sophisticated presentations. He's going to talk about it. And we basically explain, here's what we did, here's how we did it. Everybody had buy-in in it. We had input from everyone. Here's the analysis that we did. Here's what we came up with. Here's what needs to be repaired. Here's the cost of repair. Here's an allocation based upon technical issues only. And then somebody else would address, Bob Friedman, for example, if there is a neutral analyzing it. If not, we turn it over, and then they start talking about the legal issues, defenses, and coverage issues. So the basic tools of what we do are customized solution by case. That's an absolute priority. Linda mentioned it earlier. There's no cookie cutter approach that can be to every case is different. Every set of parties is different. All the stakeholders approach it differently. We do things in the cloud. Sean's going to talk a little bit about that later. All of our data is in the cloud. Again, it's a completely open process, unless the parties don't want it that way, but everyone I've been involved in, the parties want it in the cloud. They get access to data in real time. They can look at the pictures. They can have their consultants looking at it. There's no secrets. Stakeholder email notification of process updates. We use a system in the cloud that when we organize the data and we help the mediator, if they want, organize and control, manage the mediation process, we put all the data into a software program in the cloud, and it automatically notifies everybody by email. So it takes the mediators out of having to be the babysitters. And so 30 days before mediation, there are reminders sent out via email to everybody that needs to, whether it's an insurance carrier or a attorney or experts. This is what's happening. And then there's one sent out 21 days ahead of time, and then 14 days ahead of time, and then 7 days ahead of time. So when people come to a mediation session or a meeting, whatever the case is, if they're not prepared, it is totally 100% their fault. They've had the notification, it's clear what they're here to do, and they're just not prepared. And so it really kind of isolates them, and frankly, it forces them to be more prepared because of the reminders. It's the same thing we do in construction projects. You don't call a subcontractor up the day before he's due on the job. You call him a month ahead of time. Make sure he's got the materials and equipment. You call him 3 weeks ahead of time or 2 weeks ahead of time. You call him a week ahead of time, and then you call him the night before. So there's no surprises. Stakeholder notification of upcoming events, same thing. It's automatic. It's in the computer system. Bam. Every time a date is extended or updated, it's automatically done. It's in the computer. Nobody in the process is the bad guy anymore. The 2 software programs we use are just basic, we call them project management light. We help the team manage their process. All the stakeholders are part of the process. So if you don't manage it, and that came up a couple times today and a couple times yesterday, it's not going to flow that well. And there's still plenty of challenges in the process to resolution. You don't need basic ones like project management not to be there. And then stakeholder notification, it's just, again, it's automatic updating, automatic information flow. And we've done enough of these now on cases. We're actually using them on some of the cases where we're not a neutral, where we're actually using them. For example, Richard's firm's hired us on 2 hotels in Orange County. We're using the same thing to notify all the experts, all the attorneys, everybody what's going on a regular basis proactively, as opposed to the last minute flurry of phone calls. Hey, is everybody ready? It works out pretty well. And that's basically what our cloud process schedule looks like. It's more sophisticated than that, but that's kind of a summary view. When we break it down, we can break it down any way you want or need. It doesn't matter. It's completely flexible. A couple of quotes. I won't bore you with those, but I thought they were interesting. And that's it. That's my spiel for the day.